Welcome to the next video in our CC3D Revolution and LibrePilot series. In the first couple of videos we got the model to this stage here where it's flying, but the thing that we didn't do was add the GPS module. Now this model has actually come with a GPS. This is the one that came with it, and this can be used to fly with. However, if you want much better GPS functionality, then you can get any U-Blocks based GPS and add it to the model as well. Now the whole point of adding GPS to something like this is to give you GPS flight modes. Now in LibrePilot itself there are a number of additional flight modes that rely on GPS, and we'll go through the flight modes in a later video, but you can go on the LibrePilot website and read up now about all of the different things that it allow you to do. But there are two that I'll talk about very quickly. The first is the ability to do like a GPS home feature, where you can store the home location where you actually take off, and then if you get into trouble you can flick the switch and select that mode on your radio, or you can set up failsafe so it selects that mode and then the model will fly back to you. That's a really nice way to do it, and it means that if ever you get into trouble the model will come back home. The other thing you can do with it as well is also do things like GPS hold, where the model will actually stay in position in 3D space using the GPS and the barometer and magnetometer as well. And these are all features that you don't get with a standard CC3D. You only get them with the Revolution, which is why we're looking at adding the GPS in this video. So what we'll do is we'll look at how you plug the GPS in. We'll also talk about how you configure this thing. To configure the GPS you are going to need one of these things here. For those of you that have been on the channel for a while, you will know these inside and out. These are called FTDI basic adapters. They allow you to plug things into a USB port and talk to them. We're going to use this to configure the GPSs, because in theory you should be able to just plug the GPS into the CC3D Revolution and have it all working. However, the auto configure feature that is supposed to be here I haven't had a great deal of success with. So what we're going to do is go through and configure the GPS so that we can plug it in and it will work. Then we'll go through the additional setup pieces in here so that we have all of the calibration routines run through. We've done the basic one, which is calibrate the accelerometers in the previous video, and that was enough to get it flying. But if we want to use the GPS modes for flight, then there's another 3 or 4 things that we need to do. So we'll do that once the GPS is on. And then finally, a couple of tips and tricks at the end. So first of all, let's talk about how you actually connect the GPS to the CC3D. On the side of the CC3D Revolution, which we have here, we have 3 ports. This one at the very back is the main port, then we have the auxiliary port, and then we have kind of a sensing port. The main and auxiliary ports, the one at this side and the middle one, can be used to plug the GPS into. The GPS that comes in the kit is all set up, and the 4 wires that are at the end, the black is ground, red is +5 volts, and the other 2 are then send and receive. But as I've said, in theory this should have just plugged in, configured up, and would have been good to go. However, it doesn't. So what we'll do then is let's talk about how we connect this GPS to our FTDI adapter, and then what we'll do is we'll go through the process of actually configuring this little guy using a little bit of software. So for this to work, there are 2 things that we actually need to get hold of. The first is obviously our FTDI adapter, and make sure that we have a cable that we can use to connect it to the GPS. The second thing we need is a bit of software. Now the really nice thing is the new LibrePilot documentation is really well written. It doesn't appear to be complete as of the recording of the video, but the stuff that there is getting very good. So I'll put this link that we're using at the top in the description so you can go straight to this, or to find this page I just googled for LibrePilot GPS setup. So the first thing it talks about, and this is the entire process documented here, so if you're not sure or I'm losing you with my description you can just read through it. We're going to talk about how we're going to connect everything up, but the first thing we'll look at is the software that you need. So if you click on this link where it says product information, it'll take you to the U-Center setup software. Now this is the software that we're actually going to use in a second on the PC to actually configure how this all works. So you just download it and then you can use it on your computer. It's great, it allows you to interrogate the GPS but also to turn on and off the functions that we need for the setup. If we just go back to our LibrePilot page, then the next thing we need to do is to connect the FTDI basic adapter up to the u-blox GPS, and you can see here that we connect the black wire from the GPS to the ground pin on the FTDI adapter. The plus 5 volt pin on the FTDI adapter goes to the plus 5 volts on the GPS, and then the other two cables, the blue one goes from the transmit pin on the FTDI adapter to the receive pin on the GPS, and similarly the receive pin on the FTDI adapter goes to the transmit pin. Now on the little GPS that we have here, I had to guess this because it wasn't clear which way round receive and transmit were, so I tried it one way, and then if it didn't work I just swapped these two pins around and it was fine. So once you've done this, then you can plug the FTDI adapter into your computer and then you can start to follow all of these instructions. So we're going to follow this as well in a second. We're going to plug it in, we'll revert to the default configuration, then we will disable all the NMEA stuff that was already on the GPS, and then we'll actually start setting up the u-blox stuff, how we want that information to be sent to the flight controller, and then finally the update rates, and then we save all the config back. So again, everything that you need to know to set up the GPS is very nicely laid out on this page, including the link to the software and also the wiring diagram too. Now I've got my GPS and FTDI connected as we have it here. Let's jump onto the netbook and I'll actually physically go through how we do the configuration to show it you in action. Once we've done that, then we can plug it into LibrePilot and we can start to configure that up so the GPS can be seen. So let's go to the netbook. So here we are in uCenter. I've downloaded it and started it. We have the GPS connected as per the diagram. So now we're going to see what we can actually see. Hopefully we'll see why the CC3D Revolution hasn't been happy with the GPS. So I'm going to click connect. At the bottom we can see it has connected. It's saying it's COM7 9600 board, but it's showing as an NMEA protocol. We don't want that, we want it to be all u-blox stuff. So what we'll do now then is, now we know that that's the problem, we'll go through and we'll actually configure this GPS to be u-blox, and so we can plug it into the Revolution to use. So the first thing we need to do then is to look at the packet console. So we're going to view, packet console, F6, and here we are. We actually can see information. This is information that's coming over the FTDI basic from the GPS, and we can see that it's all working. So that's promising. We know that the GPS is alive and well, even if it doesn't know how to talk to the CC3D Revo. So the next thing we'll do, we'll go into view, configuration view. We'll make this as big as we can, and there's a couple of things in here that we're going to have to change. So the first thing we're going to have to change is we'll go into config and we'll click on revert to default configuration and click send. Okay, and that should now have got rid of anything on the GPS that we don't want, and now we can start to configure the Virgin GPS with the things that we actually need. So we'll close that window. Then we'll go into view, message view, and this is where everything's set up. Now here on the left hand side you'll see that under NMEA there is an awful lot of stuff turned on. We need to right click anything that is highlighted and say disable, and what we're doing is we're just turning off all of the NMEA data that's coming through, because that's not what the Revolution wants. So let's keep coming down to the bottom. Okay, we're going to do everything that's under here. Okay, so now everything that's under NMEA is now disabled, which is how we want it. So now I need to enable the uBlocks messages that we actually want, and we only want 4 of them. And again, don't forget, all this is documented in that web page that we looked at. So if you're not sure about exactly what we're doing here, the way I'm doing it is the way I recommend you doing it. We're recording here on the laptop, and we've got the main PC actually showing the instructions. So we're going to go into Nav. In here is all the stuff that we're interested in. So we're going to enable DOP. We're going to enable POS LLH. We're then going to enable SOL. And we're going to enable VELNED. And once we can see all those are bolded, then we're going to go up to this little gear at the top with a little floppy disk by the side, and we're going to click on that to send it to the GPS. Now we're almost there now. We just need to configure the ports and the speed. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the configuration window. So I'm going to close this out and say View, Configuration View. And this is where initially we did the revert to default configuration, but we're not doing it this time. We're going to go in the PRT, which is ports, and then we need to say that we want just the uBlock stuff sending across. That's all we're interested in. And set a speed. I would say we'll try 19,200, and then we need to click send. You'll notice at the bottom that we've now immediately flicked to 19,200. If you do that and then you lose connection with the GPS, I would always make sure that you have auto boarding selected, and then the software will always try and reacquire the GPS by trying each baud rate in turn, so you don't have to. So I would always recommend, if you're having trouble keeping the connection, just make sure that that is highlighted. So now we are there. We just have the last thing to change, which is rates. So we're going to go into the rate tab. Now we're going to change the times here to be 200 milliseconds. Make sure it's 5 Hertz, 1 cycle, navigation frequency. Click send again. And now we've done everything, we'll make sure that everything is saved back onto the machine. So we're going to say save current configuration. Everything is highlighted, and we're going to click send. So now our GPS should be configured, and we can see at the bottom it says we're on COM7 19,200. We can see UBX or uBlocks protocol. If we wanted to, we could just jump into the packet console. And there is all of the information coming down, so we know it's all still working. You can see here that at the beginning it says UBX all the time, so we know everything's good. Okay, so now we can go and plug it in and configure it in LibrePilot. So the first thing we need to do here, of course, is plug the GPS into the flight controller. We can either go into the main port or the flexi port. I've put it in the middle port, which is the flexi port. So if we then go into LibrePilot to see how the configuration is done, remember the configuration was originally gone through, and I told the CC3D Revolution that we did have a GPS uBlocks connected. Then all I've done here is I've made sure that for the flexi port it's set for GPS rather than the main port. And now if we go back onto the flight controller screen, we can see that the GPS is doing something, but if we actually click on it, it says it's receiving data, but there's no position fix. The first time you plug a GPS in, it can take a long time to get a fix, and once it has got that fix, then it speeds up because that kind of information is saved into its memory. So don't worry if it first starts and looks like this. Eventually it will go to amber, and then it will go to green, showing that the GPS is now working. The other thing it's worthwhile having a look at is to go into System, go into Settings, GPS Settings, and in here are all of the things that were configured for us by the installation routine. So you can see here that we actually have the u-blocks protocol, the number of satellites minimum before it will be happy, the u-blocks rate, but this is the one I'm interested in, u-blocks auto config. Now this in theory should be the thing that actually set the GPS up for me without me having to touch a thing. Unfortunately it didn't, so that's why we've had to go through that process. You might be lucky and be able to figure out exactly how to get this to work using the auto config and configure. I didn't, so I've just left it as defaults and it's working fine. So the next thing we'll do then is go through the additional calibration pieces. Because we have a GPS that's running while it's warming up, we can do that. So the first thing you need to do is set your home position. So you need to move the map around, you need to zoom in, and then when you are over the piece that you need, you can right click it and say set the home location. You need to do that first before any of the calibration stuff. So to do this piece, let me just put an insert of the actual model as we're going to do this, because we're going to have to move it around a lot. You want it as far away from any metal objects or anything with an electromagnetic field as you possibly can, because we're going to do a couple of calibration things. Now this can be a little confusing. I've unplugged my battery for this. It's better doing it with the battery connected if you can. That way then any of the magnetic fields created by the power system is kind of taken into account when you're doing the calibration. So first of all we'll do the accelerometer calibration. So I'll click on that first. It'll ask me to place it horizontally, which it is. I'm not going to touch anything. I'm going to click save position. It's going to calculate that, and then it's going to ask us to move the craft around. So now place it nose down. I'm going to want to keep it very, very still. Click on save position. Going to click on the right side. Having these motor mounts on this model really helps. Click save position, and again if you move it at all the calibration will fail, so you have to be really careful. We're going to move it upside down. Now this is going to be tricky for me because I have these big aerials on the back, so I'm actually going to pop it on a box to help me do this. Click save position. We now need it nose up. Click save position. Place left side down. And you can see this calibration routine is far more complicated than the basic accelerometer calibration that we did to get the board flying without the GPS. The accelerometer calibration completed successfully. Brilliant. Next thing we need to do then is we need to do the magnetometer calibration. Now this is one, as I said, that you can be useful to have the battery plugged in for this. We haven't because I've got my props on, and of course this is best done with the props off with the battery plugged in. I'm going to click on start. It's going to say place horizontally pointing nose north and press save. This is why I have my little compass out here. So I'm going to try and line it up as best I can with north. Move the compass out the way because that is going to be having a small magnetic field. We're going to place it level and we're going to click save position. Now although it is plain in the graphic, we are going to try and follow the orientation to make this work. Save position again. Now we need to now put it down and with its back to north like that. Click save position. It needs to be facing that side, facing north now. Again, if you're not sure, just double check it. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but the more accurate it is, the better the final result. Click save position. Now it wants to have on its back facing this way. Again, I'm going to use my little cardboard box to help me. So we'll just pop that down there. Just double check it is facing westish. I think it should be pretty close. Probably like that's better. Click save position. Now this time it wants me to have it on its back, facing up, facing north. Save position. Now it wants it facing south on this side as well. So all we're doing with this is we're just following the instructions. Again, I'm just going to wait for north to settle down so I can line it up as best I can. That's pretty spot on. Click save position. Then it says magnetometer calibration completed successfully. So we've done the two really hard parts. So the last thing we need to do then is board level calibration. Click on start, place horizontally and press save. It is. This is going to calibrate what level feels like again. We did a very basic version of this in the previous video. Rotate 180 degrees along the yaw axis and press the save position. This is just making sure that it knows what level feels like. In case there's a little bias one way or the other, it can kind of cancel that out. Board level calibration completed successfully. The last one is gyro bias. So it's just going to keep the board completely still. It's going to just check that if there's any slight drift with the gyroscopes, it's going to figure that out and calibrate it. Fantastic. Okay, now we have everything set up. We're now ready to carry on with the series and do the other things that we need to do to get this craft flying. In the next one, we'll start to look at the uplink radios, then we'll start to have a look at the flight modes, and then we'll also get into a little bit more detail about programming it for things like GPS return to home, and we'll do demos of those modes as well. Thank you for sticking with us through this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.